On December 18, 1940, Adolf Hitler approved Directive No. 21. Operation Barbarossa was the code name for the plan and military operation to seize the European part of the USSR. The idea behind Operation Barbarossa was to deliver a crushing defeat to the Red Army and conquer the Soviet Union within a few months using Blitzkrieg tactics.
Blitzkrieg tactics from German Blitzkrieg lightning war is a military strategy based on a rapid, sudden, and powerful attack aimed at paralyzing the enemy before they have time to organize a defense.
The plan was named after Frederick I Barbarossa 1122-1190, who was King of Germany from 1152, Holy Roman Emperor from 1155, and Duke of Swabia from 1147 to 1152. Frederick died during the Third Crusade, when he fell into the Salif River while crossing it, wearing heavy armor.
World War II began on September 1, 1939, when Germany invaded Poland. 2 weeks later, Soviet troops entered Poland from the east, a result of a secret agreement between Germany and the Soviet Union to divide Polish territory. In 1940, Germany swiftly conquered France using the Blitzkrieg tactic. However, it failed to break Britain's resistance. The country continued to fight. Hitler believed that if the Soviet Union was defeated, Britain would lose its last hope of victory. That's why, in July 1940, the decision was made to attack the USSR.
Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union was not like a spear thrust at a single point. The attack was launched simultaneously in three main directions. This was the essence of Operation Barbarossa, which marked the beginning of the Great Patriotic War for Soviet citizens. Army Group South. The strike was aimed at Moldova, Ukraine, Crimea, and a push toward the Caucasus. The ultimate goal was to advance to the Astrakhan-Stalingrad-Volgograd line. Army Group Center. This axis moved along the Minsk-Smolensk-Moscow route. The objective was to reach Nizhny Novgorod, aligning the front along the Volga-Northern Dwina line. Army Group North. The target was the Baltic states, Leningrad, and further advancement to Arkhangelsk and Murmansk. Simultaneously, in the north, the Army of Norway was to fight alongside the Finnish army. By approximately the end of October 1941, the German High Command planned to reach the Volga-Northern Dwina line, thereby capturing the entire European part of the USSR. This was the idea behind the Lightning War. After the Blitzkrieg, only the lands beyond the Urals would remain, which, without support from the center, would quickly surrender to the victor. Germany had 208 divisions for waging war. Of these forces, by June 22, 1941, 166 deployed divisions of Germany and its allies were positioned on the Eastern Front. The total number of troops that Germany sent to the Eastern Front, 1941-1945, amounts to approximately 19 million people. From the table provided, it is clear that the numerical superiority in equipment was clearly on the side of the Soviet Union. However, this does not reflect the real situation. The fact is that Russia's economic development at the beginning of the century was significantly hindered by the Civil War. This affected, among other things, the condition of military equipment. Compared to German armaments, it was already outdated, but the worst part was that a large portion of it was physically unusable. It was only conditionally combat-ready and very often required repairs. Moreover, the Red Army was not fully staffed for wartime. There was a catastrophic shortage of personnel. But even worse, a significant portion of the soldiers available were untrained recruits. On the German side, however, there were veterans who had gone through real military campaigns. Neither the FHR, nor the field marshals, nor the ordinary German soldiers doubted a quick and inevitable victory over the USSR. This is evidenced not only by official documents, but also by the personal diaries of military commanders, as well as letters sent from the front by ordinary soldiers. Everyone was euphoric from the previous military campaigns and eagerly anticipated a swift victory on the Eastern Front. The first 3 weeks of the war convinced Hitler that everything was going according to plan. The army was rapidly advancing, achieving victories, while the Soviet army suffered enormous losses. 28 out of 170 divisions were rendered combat ineffective. About 70 divisions lost around 50% of their personnel. Only 72 divisions remained combat-ready, 43 of those available at the start of the war, according to reports. The first German attack on the USSR took place on June 22, 1941. By July 11th, most of the Baltic states were occupied, and the approach to Leningrad was cleared. Army Group North. In the center, the German army advanced at an average speed of about 30 kilometers per day. the divisions of von Bock's Army Group Center reached Smolensk without much difficulty. In the south, a breakthrough was also made, which was planned for the first stage, and the main forces were already positioned near the Ukrainian capital. The next step for Army Group South was to capture Kyiv. These were the last achievements that fully corresponded to the German command's plan. After that, failures began, still local, but already significant. Nevertheless, the initiative in the war remained with Germany until the end of 1941. Until about mid-August 1941, the Germans believed that the war was going according to plan. But by September, diary entries from officers began to appear stating that the Barbarossa plan had failed and the war would be lost. Army Group North occupied the Baltic states without difficulty, especially since there was practically no partisan movement there. The next strategic objective to capture was Leningrad. However, it turned out that the Wehrmacht was not capable of accomplishing this task. The city did not surrender to the enemy, and despite all efforts, Germany failed to capture it until the end of the war. The siege of Leningrad began on September 8th. Army Group Center reached Smolensk without difficulty, but got stuck outside the city until September 10th. Smolensk resisted for almost a month. The German command demanded a decisive victory and the advance of the troops, since such a delay near a city that was planned to be taken with minimal losses was unacceptable and cast doubt on the implementation of the Barbarossa plan. In the end, the Germans captured Smolensk, but their troops were heavily battered. Fierce fighting for the city of Veliky Luki continued for another whole month. Although it was not strategically important, the battles delayed the advance of the German army. This, in turn, gave time to prepare the defense of Moscow. Therefore, from a tactical point of view, it was important to hold the defense as long as possible. The Red Army soldiers fought fiercely despite their losses. They not only defended, but also carried out raids on the enemy's flanks, further dispersing their forces. Today, historians assess the resistance on the Smolensk front as a tactical victory for Germany but a strategic victory for the USSR, since it managed to stop the advance of the troops toward Moscow, allowing the capital to prepare its defenses. The partisan movement in Belarus complicated the German army's advance deeper into the country. Army Group South encountered resistance along the entire route through Ukraine. The Romanian divisions were tied down by Odessa. They could neither support the advance on the capital nor serve as reinforcements for Field Marshal Karl von Rundstedt. However, the Wehrmacht forces reached Kyiv relatively quickly. It took only 3.5 weeks to advance to the city. But in the battles for Kyiv itself, the German army became bogged down, as on other fronts. The delay was so significant that Hitler decided to send reinforcements from Army Group Center. The Red Army suffered heavy losses. 5 armies were encircled. A total of 665,000 soldiers were taken prisoner. However, Germany was losing time. In the end, the city was captured due to the clear superiority of the German army. But Kyiv held out until almost the end of September, further hindering the German advance and making a significant contribution to the failure of the Barbarossa plan. In the north, it was not possible to capture Leningrad and Murmansk. The advance of the troops was halted. In the center, it was with great difficulty that they managed to reach Moscow. By the time the German army reached the Soviet capital, it was already clear that there would be no Blitzkrieg. In the south, they failed to capture Odessa and seize the Caucasus. By the end of September, Hitler's troops had only taken Kyiv and had begun an offensive on Kharkov and the Donbass. Each delay postponed the moment of the strike against Moscow's main forces. Every day gained gave the Soviet army and militia more time to prepare the defense. Every extra day meant the need to supply German soldiers who were deep inside hostile territory. In the end, the Barbarossa plan was never completed. First of all, the plan was indeed well thought out and calculated, but only under the condition of a blitzkrieg. As soon as the pace of the advance through enemy territory slowed down, its assumptions became invalid. Secondly, the planners underestimated the military, economic, and moral political potential of the USSR and its ability to build up the combat power of the Red Army. Hitler himself stated that the failure of the operation to capture the Soviet Union was due to false assumptions based on incorrect intelligence. The German FHR even claimed that, if he had had accurate information, he would not have approved the start of the offensive. There were also other objective factors why the Blitzkrieg failed. There were intentions to annihilate the Slavs, which is why the resistance they put up was desperate. Even under conditions of complete isolation, shortages of ammunition and food, the Red Army soldiers continued to fight literally to their last breath. They understood that death was inevitable, so they fought fiercely and made their lives dearly paid. The activity of partisan groups greatly distracted the Germans. The difficult terrain, poor road conditions, swamps and marshes, not always detailed on maps, also added headaches for the German commanders. At the same time, this terrain and its features were well known to the Soviet people, and they made full use of this knowledge. The implementation of the Barbarossa Plan was thwarted by the heroic struggle of the Soviet people. The war stretched on for 1,418 days and nights and ended very differently than Hitler had hoped.